Tribune. This is Leah.
Hi, Leah. This is Rosa Koire. I'm calling you back.
Hey, Rosa. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. Hey, thank you so much for getting back to me. I'm sorry you had to take a detour to Texas.
Yeah, but I'm back. So let's see. So you were writing a story about the meeting that we had in Wyoming in Casper.
Just a follow up to the piece that happened on Saturday, and I'm at my computer here pulling up the document where I kind of prepped a couple of questions for you.
Great.
And so to start off, it was Michelle Starkey, right, who contacted you and asked you to come into town.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. And what was there anything specific about some things going on in Minnesota County, which is the county here where Casper is seated, that concerned you, or that your eyes were open to when you were here, I guess?
Well, the thing.
What you're talking about?
Definitely Wyoming is, just like every other state in the 50 states, in that, it's fully, they're fully implementing United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development in Wyoming through land use plans and land use planning, and also through restrictive laws, like, for instance, your smoking ban. So, no, I didn't see anything particularly, different about Wyoming.
All right. And the thing with you, we mentioned this a couple of times on Saturday night, is that Wyomings are pretty much an independent lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a pretty big push to preserve our open spaces, but also to preserve sort of a rural lifestyle. And my question to you is, does responsible development, efficient town planning, some of the smart growth techniques that are included and suggested in this non-binding Agenda 21, don't they actually aid in preserving the open spaces as such, so that most people can enjoy them?
I'd like to first take issue with what you just said. You referred to it as non-binding Agenda 21.
Right.
And if you do your research, Leah, which I really hope that you will, and I hope that you're going to write a fair article and speak the truth in this article. It's very important that you do that. And you'll be one of the first reporters who does if you do it. The thing with Agenda 21 Sustainable Development is that it's not a treaty. It was signed onto by our president, George H.W. Bush, and then he left office, and that next year Clinton created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. Now that brought United Nations Agenda 21. The sole purpose of that council was to bring Agenda 21 into the United States and implement it all across the United States. So, when you say that's not binding, if the United States implements it, it is binding, because this is what we are doing in our country. So, this is just semantics then. And so when you're looking at, for instance, your Casper Comprehensive Plan, and it's the same plan that you see all across the United States, and these plans are supposed to be vetted by the people, created by the people, and in fact they are not. And this is, so you can, I can say to you, don't you want clean water? Well, then you have to agree to this plan. There is no particular nexus there. And this is what's happening with these plans, is that they are being, they're being held up to the country, to anyone who would call them out, and, people who are bringing to the attention of the nation that these plans are a manipulation, and that they are actually, the same plan all across the United States. People who bring this up are referred to as conspiracy theorists. This is not a conspiracy. This is exactly what is happening.
And can you, I guess I was on the phone with a planner this morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got off the phone with Michelle Starkey, the woman who kind of brought you to town. So I've been, talking to people, and Michelle agreed with you in saying that, these plans and these, quote, public meetings are just sort of a farce, because they're prefabbed plans that are coming in and being handed to folks. But can you offer proof of that? What sorts of empirical evidence can prove that comments written as you say in your book, on note cards at meetings are then discarded later.
Well, aside from my own personal observation, I mean, this is the observation of people across the nation, and the fact is that the plans don't change. If you go into a meeting and every single person in there says that they do not support the plan, that plan is still going to go through, just as it was written. We are not seeing that these plans are being modified or changed or discarded or rejected. The plans are all going forward. So, this is a very clear indicator, obviously, that that these are not generated. Supposedly they're bottom-up generated. This is the whole lie of Agenda 21. It's really global, regional, neighborhood. It is a top-down program, but it's implemented locally. So that's how they can, give the impression or lie and say that, that it's coming right, it's your idea, it's your plan, you came up with it.
And what if a planner was to say, we need to do something like complete streets is a phrase that I've been hearing, where you should have a walking lane as in a sidewalk, you should have a bike lane, and you should have lanes for cars. So you have to accommodate everybody's interest. That, sounds to me like they're respecting the rights of people, giving them choices as to whether they want to walk, whether they want to bike, whether they want to drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds great, doesn't it? And of course, I walk, bike, and drive myself, and I support that. But Complete Streets, it's a federal program. This is all across the United States, and what this really is not about making sure that you have a sidewalk when you're going somewhere. This is about distributing federal dollars to towns that agree to build smart growth. And in some areas, it's being, these are federal dollars or state dollars or local tax dollars that are being used to subsidize high-density development on either sides of those streets. Most of those streets, and I suggest that if you do take a look, if you have looked at my book, if you go to the Natural Resources Defense Council and go to their page that is something like Picturing Smart Growth or something like that. Yeah. Now when you go and take a look at that, they have a great little visual there. These are morphing photographs that show what happens when you have so-called complete streets. Mm-hmm. And so you click on it, you can go across the nation and click on these things. So you see some sort of desolate-looking intersection, sort of boring little intersection out there in nowhere. And then you click on the photo and it morphs into, buildings on either side of the street and lots of people shopping and, the same type of buildings, ground floor retail, high-density residential on top of that. This is subsidized by your dollars. These, the question is not who owns that land and what is happening to them. Are they losing their land? Are they being partnered with? Are they being duped out of their property? Are they being zoned out of existence there? Those are not questions that are being asked, and they need to be asked. And when you talk to a planner, Leah, those planners have been indoctrinated with a 12-week-long communications boot camp that was just put out by the American Planning Association. And I have that. And, these planners are being instructed to basically protect these plans at all costs. They are being instructed to indoctrinate and inoculate elected officials against people who are speaking the truth about what's going on.
Okay. One of the arguments that was presented to me by a planner was that we need to be responsible with the taxpayers' money. And in being responsible with taxpayers' money, we're talking rural taxpayers as well as urban taxpayers here in the Trona County, people who live in Casper, people who live outside of the incorporated cities. We need to plan efficiently so that resources, fire, emergency, EMS, law enforcement, all of these resources and services that we provide to the people in the city, this is what the planners are saying, need to be sort of given most efficiently, and that includes some of these smart growth elements. So the planners are saying this is a fiscal responsibility issue. In order to be fiscally responsible, we need to be doing some of these smart growth policies and techniques in our planning. But do you see it as something different?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a straight out question for them would be who's paying for these plans? How much do they cost? Why are consultants doing them? What's happening with these, with the city center, with redevelopment? Why is, why are property tax dollars being used for 20 to 35 years to pay off these city center plans that then bankrupt your general plan, your general fund? I mean, it's very easy to just like say something like fiscal responsibility, but if you look into it, you will see that this plan is basically going to bankrupt Casper and every other city, and that this is
which plan?
All of your plans. If you're using the complete streets, the smart growth, where it's federally or state subsidized high density development that may or may not pay property taxes, where you have your taxes going to pay for redevelopment projects, and those are they have to get bonds from bond brokers, and then those bonds have to get paid off over a long term, 20 to 35, sometimes 40 years. That's where that money goes. So then, it might look nice right now, but what about in 10 years when you need money for your police and fire, or for your, your pensions, and, to keep your street lights on in your city, and there's no money there because it's going to pay off bond brokers for years. You're locked into that.
In what cities has this happened?
Oh, it's all across the country.
Cities going broke because they're paying off bonds?
Yeah, I'll tell you a good example is Hercules, California, where the city manager basically said, no, we're not going to be paying off the bond brokers anymore because we just simply don't have the money, and you can't get blood out of a turnip. That's what he said. Okay. And just take a look at California. You want to see where you're headed. You take a look at that, because that is basically a state where many cities are literally being drained through their redevelopment project areas.
Okay. Through redevelopment. All right. And I guess I'm just not seeing that in Casper.
Well, you probably will.
Okay. And talk to me about how you think property rights get trampled in the process of redevelopment.
In redevelopment?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens with redevelopment, in some areas, you have to declare the redevelopment area blighted. When you do that, it brings in order to declare the area blighted in the first place, you have cities often deny building permits way in advance. They do punitive code enforcement in order to create blight. They restrict people from being able to use their properties, so that the area appears to be blighted. And this can go on for years in advance of the plan.
Okay. And can you point to specific examples of where that has happened?
Yes. Right in my city, for instance, in Santa Rosa, California, where I served on the project area committee, the oversight advisory committee, for a huge 1,300-acre redevelopment project, and I found that the plan was fraudulent, and we sued to stop that project. What we found was that in the main corridor, the main transportation corridor and retail corridor, commercial corridor for the town, the portion that they wanted to redevelop, they had been basically purposely depressing the property values in that area for a number of years, about 8 years or 10 years, and property owners were not able to get permits to build anything on those parcels. So properties were literally falling into ruin, and then were being cited for code enforcement. So this is a cycle, it's a plan, and I have a free download on my website called Redevelopment: The Unknown Government. It's on the source page, and it's a real quick, easy read. It's got cartoons, very entertaining, and it's simple to understand what this does. It's a lie that it's actually an economic driver. It isn't.
Okay. Now tell me again what the name of that download is.
It's called Redevelopment: The Unknown Government, and you'll find the free download on my resource page on Democrats Against UN, agenda21.com.
I've got it open right now.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Yeah, I think if you look, I think the first section is resistance sites, Yeah, if you just, it's about halfway down that list, and you'll see it there.
I think that I just don't see any of this happening in Casper or in Natrona County.
I think what you're going to see is people who are being subjected to code enforcement restrictions. Who are what you're seeing in Casper. See, you're out in a rural area,
Right.
and the plan, really essentially targets rural areas across the nation because of the Wildlands Project. And so the idea is to, refuse to allow people to continue to live out in the rural areas and bring them into, the city centers, the dense city centers, and then further move them from there through America2050.org, the mega regions, into higher density cities.
Well, yeah, let me stop you just for a second and ask a question about one of the first things you said, which is that people would be refused to, not allowed to live out in the rural areas anymore. And that was something that I brought up on the phone this morning with the planner.
Mm-hmm.
And it quite simply was shot down as that being not true. And the way that he explained it to me is that through what he called incentives, developers would be incentivized to preserve open spaces as they're developing outside of the incorporated city limits, out in the rural areas of, say, Natrona County. And that also people wouldn't be, literally herded into urban areas. It simply costs more to provide services to the rural areas than it does to provide services closer to the county seat. And so, this planner was proposing, let's just ask the folks living out in the rural areas, not ask them to do anything different or move into the city, but ask them to pay their way a little bit and to help absorb some of the additional costs to the county seat. What do you have to say to sort of that argument?
So what's he saying, that people should be their property taxes should be higher when they're out of the city center?
Yeah, he proposed a couple of different. I pushed him for specifics, and what I got back was conditional use permits, charging for those. The impact fees for developers coming out to build in the rural areas. They need to start paying for their own sewer, their own water, their own roads, things like that. And then the third was maybe an increase in property tax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you're saying that there's that doesn't translate for you to punitive impacts on rural areas. I mean, you don't have sewer out there in the rural areas because you're not running a sewer line out there.
Right.
They're on a well. What services are they getting from the county? The roads,
law enforcement, fire.
Okay, so and they pay for that. They pay for that with their property taxes.
Okay, and I guess that the studies that the planner was citing were saying that still more expensive to have increased impacts on county roads and increased costs for those services to go out into the rural areas.
Mm-hmm. Well, people have lived out in rural areas, and so what you're forever, right? This is this is our nation. There's a huge portion of our country that lives out in rural areas. So county roads are maintained. This is one of the only things that your taxes go for when you're paying taxes to the county out there.
Right.
And so if you have basically, you should go and take a look. You ask your county how much they charge when someone wants to build a house. What the fees are. There are high fees. In some cases, like in my county, you pay close to $150,000 just for fees. That's not, you're not building anything with that. That is just fees.
I know that they'd be quite as high here in this county. That's
no, I'm sure they wouldn't.
What I've heard.
No, of course. And, obviously a house here is going to go for $500,000. So, it's relative, okay?
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is that you pay fees in order to get permits to build. You're paying road fees. You pay your gasoline tax. You are paying to use your roads. And this, so basically, here's a planner who's justifying, basically putting restrictions. He wants to add on fees. He wants to give you a conditional use permit to build on your land out there if you want to put a house on it. Basically, you've got to pay him more money. And the thing is that I want to know what the planners are doing with the money. when they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for these plans, for these comprehensive plans, what is the planner pay? Why are the cities and counties paying? Why are they paying consultants for these plans?
And I asked this is our town planning office here in town, the MPO. He said that quite simply, comprehensive plans don't happen very often, once every 10 years. And so the regular staff of, I think it's like 3 people that staff Casper's town planning redevelopment department aren't outfitted to do that because they don't need to be, you know. They don't need to be in terms of the length of time or the frequency of these comprehensive plans occurring. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah, so they get them out of a box, or they pay a consultant, you know, $100,000 or a couple $100,000 or many hundreds of thousands, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
And
this planner also told me that it's his job to make sure that these plans aren't prefabbed and prepackaged and delivered to the citizens in Shoshone County. He said, if I'm doing my job right, you know, I and the consultants will be directed by public input from day one. And it's if a consulting firm is clearly not listening to what the people at these public meetings and these, you know, envisioning meetings, right, are saying, then it's his job as the planner to fire that consulting company.
yeah, I'm sorry, Leah, he's lying to you. He might even think that he's telling the truth. But the truth is that these plans are all the same plan across the country. And they all call for smart growth. Now, the people there don't, you know, I don't, where do you live? Do you live in an apartment on top of a shop in the center of your town?
No, I live in a 1913 house in just outside of downtown Casper.
Yeah. Okay, well, why aren't you living in an apartment on top of a shop?
They're too expensive.
So you'd rather live there?
Would I rather live there in downtown Casper?
Uh-huh.
On top of a shop? I kind of would.
Well, do you have kids?
What's that?
Do you have kids?
I don't.
Do you have a dog?
I do.
So how would that be for you to have your dog in an apartment?
Well, a little bit cramped, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, you know, this.
Where are you going with this?
Well, where I'm going with it is that most people, you know, if you wanted to live in the city center, if you wanted to live in a big city, you'd probably figure out a way to do that. You're living in Wyoming. You have a dog, and you're living in a house where you have a yard for your dog. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, smart growth is designed so that people will be concentrated in a location that is close to transit, so they don't need a vehicle. Now, if this was driven by the market, and this is the way everybody wanted to live, cool, that's great. I don't have any problem with it. I don't personally live like that, but I have no problem if you want to. But what this is not that. This is subsidized, government subsidized, private development that is being paid for with your tax dollars, and it is also being required. So that you know, when you're trying to develop something, if you want to build a house, in many areas you are not able to build a single-family residence. You have to build multi-residential, high density, and so that means that people who own those properties, who do not have a track record in developing that kind of property, because it's very expensive to develop, will not be able to develop that property, and it will either be declared blighted because it's in a redevelopment area, and then it will be passed to a favored developer who can, you know, is a crony, and it's going to get money from the redevelopment project area, or it's going to be subsidized with sustainable community strategy grants. And this is, you know, what we're seeing here is not simply bricks and mortar. We are seeing an ideology, and it is changing our nation.
So you're saying this is not driven by the market?
No, absolutely not.
People don't actually want high-rise apartments downtown.
Some people might want that, and that if it's driven by the market, it'll get built. A lot of it's vacant now. It's vacant all across the country. Mm-hmm. I have lots of, I mean, you see this everywhere. Lots of it. It's not being occupied. It's just sitting. because it was paid for with subsidized dollars, and it's, you know, the fees were taken in by the city, so they don't care if it's vacant. The developer got their subsidies, so they don't care if it's vacant. So it's just sitting there because nobody wants it. If there were a demand for this, there would be no need for these kinds of subsidies.
And did anyone mention to you while you were here or bring to your attention anything like this happening in Casper? Any of these newer, larger apartment complexes being and remaining largely unoccupied?
Well, what I saw in the center of Casper is that you're getting into launching your redevelopment project area there, across, you know, that sort of quasi-industrial area that's across from your downtown. And that, you know, this is, you know, if you look at how that plan, what that plan is planned for, you know, where your convention center or whatever, you know, that stuff is going to go. I mean, that it doesn't look like that now, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, you know.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, right.
The
So,
Yellowstone district is what
yeah.
we're talking about.
Right. So what's going to happen there? What's going to happen to the property owners there? And what, you know, how are you going to get that fantasy land? Who's paying for that?
I just see, you know, use the phrase fantasy land. I think I see it as something that's a little bit more wanted than that, a little bit more widely, enjoying some more widely public support.
But who's paying for it?
Government directive.
But who is paying for it?
I do believe it. I mean, I can't say exactly, but it would either be the taxpayers or some of the funding coming from the Metropolitan Planning Office.
So if the tax...
That'd be my guess. I haven't looked that up yet.
Okay, well, you should look into your redevelopment project area and look at the size of it, and then, you know, ask yourself how you're going to go from what you see there now to what they're imagining they're going to see. Where's the money going to come from?
Okay. That's a question I probably could ask the planner I was on the phone with earlier this week. Okay. Well,
And ask him too, what's going to happen to the property owners, the existing property owners, and are they going to use eminent domain? I know they say they're not going to. So how are they going to do it without eminent domain?
I'm typing right now. Okay. Rosa, that pretty much covers it as far as the questions that I had prepped for our phone call this morning. Do you have anything else that you think we haven't covered that we should, or that you would like to add here at the end?
I think it's really important for you to ask yourself why a plan that purports to be, you know, sort of a grassroots organic plan would be the same plan all across the United States. And then I would invite you to look at, you know, basically how this is traced back to a plan that is essentially a global plan that would erase jurisdictional boundaries and take away your rights to representative government. And this is, you know, this is not something that you know, that I am inventing or making up. These are documents. This is clearly traced, and, you know, it's a straight line to it. There's no question about it. But it's a plan that is a stealth plan that operates in plain sight. And what you need to do is recognize it and call it out. If this is a plan that is so great that the citizens of the United States want it, then it should be completely in the open and fully developed and fully discussed by every single person in our country. And this is not what's happening. This is a manipulation.
Can you help me understand that straight line to how implementing smart growth nationwide is a direct path to erasing jurisdictional boundaries?
Yes, because what we're doing is we have these regional boards. Now, you know, you have your Metropolitan Planning Organization there. Regional boards are not elected. They're made up of elected officials, but they themselves are not elected. The people have no impact on them. In fact, most people don't know they exist and don't know where they meet. So individual municipalities don't have, you know, any sway on those boards as well. These are.
What would that board look like for Wyoming?
They're metropolitan planning organizations. So so basically they now for smaller municipalities they may some of them don't have that many players seated at the table. For instance, for Los Angeles County, for this Southern California Association of Governments, that I think they have 189 cities sitting on that regional board.
Okay.
So when you have regional boards that are not elected, that are determining where dollars are going and where federal tax and state transportation tax dollars are going, and they are directing that smart growth is the preferred development style and design style, then they are remaking our cities. And this is, this is a goal of United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development, and that's why I call my book Behind the Green Mask, because that's the mask.
Why is this a goal?
Well,
it's a goal. Why do they think it's a good idea?
Because it's concentrating populations in city centers where you can be more easily monitored, surveilled, and controlled. And this is part of the plan. The plan is an inventory and control plan. And if you think, you might think I'm paranoid. I want you to know I was a district branch chief for the California Department of Transportation, an expert witness in eminent domain valuation and land use for 30 years. And this plan is the same plan all across the country.
I'm interested to know where you found proof of it being, of Agenda 21 being a plan to monitor, surveil, and control.
It's an essential, integral part of the plan. That that is part of the plan. To basically, you need to globalization is the standardization of systems. That's what it is. So, in order to standardize everything, what that means is to ultimately you're going to have everything be compatible, or to easily be standardized so that you can rate each individual city, each element of it, and each individual as well. And that is essentially what Agenda 21 is. It's an inventory and control plan. And so in order to do that, you have to standardize all the systems. And that's what we're seeing with land use.
What's the incentive for government agencies to be doing that?
Well, at this point, it's money. It's federal. You're seeing federal tax dollars. You've got your Partnership for Sustainable Communities. Yeah, that's what it is. Partnership for Sustainable Communities. That's HUD, DOT, and EPA. These are three federal agencies that were on the President's Council on Sustainable Development. And they're giving planning grants, essentially, millions and millions, $100 million a year in planning grants, sustainable